Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with your favourite show of the week, talking tactics with our man Gareth at One Villa Analysis to reflect on Fulham 1, Aston Villa 3 and give you the full tactical breakdown. It feels so, how long have we been doing these shows, Gareth? It's got to be a year and a half, and it feels like we constantly just talk about victories, which is obviously a great sign.
Yeah, that's the curse has put on that one again. But under Unai Emery, look, there's a lot of tweets been about, isn't there, about like with Steven Gerrard, look what happened at Fulham. We all know he was going on his way out, and what a shameful, shambolic performance that was last season at Craven Cottage. And look how far we've come. Incredible Champions League football. We couldn't have made it up, could we? So, it's not season before, wasn't it? But it's incredible how we've managed to do it. So. And a solid performance again, to be fair, against a court opponent who were in some reasonably decent form.
Exactly. Well, we'll get into it all with your usual visuals. You've tweeted a few out to tease people, but we always like to give you everything on this show, and then Gareth will send it out later for you all. But make sure you smash that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 5k. I know it's got 4,600 there, but we're actually very close to 4,750 now, so just a few more needed to get to that big 5k. You guys can help us get there. Like, subscribe, and get your comments in. So let's get into the tail of the tape, the match stats, and anything to kind of report here. It was fairly even in terms of possession and fairly even game, mate. But yeah, what do you decipher from this?
Yeah, I think you summed it up perfect. I think it was a fairly even game, wasn't it? It was possession was quite shared. The final third, sort of everything at the field tilt was reasonably the same. I think the difference here is that we can see we built up a lot from the back, from the goalkeeper. Like sort of quite, the 10-metre goal kick is obviously very, very short compared to the longer one from Fulham. So that was probably a little bit of a difference. But apart from that, yeah, look, across the board, really similar stats.
Yeah, and it did seem like a game, as we know, that hinged on a few key moments. But like you said, Fulham, a decent team, in decent form, strong at home as well. So it was always going to be a game of moments and influencing those moments in your favour, and that's kind of what we did.
Yeah, I think it's the same as any sort of game reasonably, especially I'll refer back to like the Manchester United game. If we'd have took our chances, we probably would have won the game. This game, we did. We did take our chances, and they didn't with a penalty.
Yeah.
So, it's all relative.
Exactly. Passing networks, our usual one. Anything to write home about here? Anything that you're particularly noticing about either side, really?
Big difference for Villa for me. The most passing combinations between the two Villa players was actually Diego Carlos to Matty Cash with 33. Now, we're used to seeing, we talk about it a lot, it's usually a left-sided build-up. And just look how high Luca Digne, number 12, is up on the Villa passing. And Jacob Ramsey next to him. Really, really important. So, but we didn't utilise that so much. I think a lot of that was probably to keep the ball away from Adama Traore on the right-hand side. And I spoke about it a lot on my position analysis on One Villa Analysis on Twitter, that you've got to keep the ball away from him, especially in the turnovers. You don't want to be losing the ball and leaving him exposed, leaving him and Pau Torres one-on-one, leaving Torres exposed, because he would have stripped him. So I think that was really important. So I think a lot of the thinking there was, let's keep the ball away from the Fulham right-hand side. Let's see how we build up from the back on the right-hand side and just see if that alternative works. And it did.
Yeah. Interesting there. Fulham played quite a high line here. Am I right in saying that? Are they quite high up? And obviously that was sort of paid the price with Ollie Watkins getting in behind and getting Anderson sent off.
Yeah, it's not that high line. It's just about. I think I've got here for the Villa one was 36.23 meters, and the Fulham one was 35.44. So we were
Oh, okay.
actually, yeah, so we were actually that little bit higher. But I think it was just a case of, again, I refer back to people. Go back and look at the opposition analysis I did. Fulham, they like to have the two centre halves really far wide, and that can leave them really exposed. So even though it does look quite high, it wasn't that high.
That's fair. That's absolutely fair enough. That's why we have you on, to kind of have this analysis and set us straight. But yeah, it is interesting because it did seem like there was the last 2 years in a row. Obviously, Watkins scored that brilliant goal last season where he got put through. I think it might have been by Tielemans, and then he gets put through by Rodgers. Chances are he would have scored. So it's interesting because that was pretty much the same type of ball and peeling off the defenders. So yeah, it's bang on what you're saying about maybe those defenders playing quite wide, which means players like Ollie Watkins can have a field day in terms of playing off the shoulder.
Yeah, this is exactly it. They play with Bassi and Anderson this season anyway. Like I say, really in the build-up, they play really far wide, and they have sort of Tetty almost in a Matty Cash type position, if you like, as a three coming sort of building back in. But the trouble is that if Bassi's got the ball and he plays it to Anderson and that ball's cut short or it's a little bit, then they have to then come together. Now, Ollie Watkins is on one of them defenders, so you're literally one-on-one, as you say. So the ball would have got to turn it over in midfield and they are really exposed again, as I said on the opposition analysis. So yeah.
Brilliant. In terms of the passing sonars, Fulham here, anything to sort of note here with regards to how they had most of their passes or their players in terms of their passing directions?
Yeah, it's quite clustered in the middle, isn't it? But I'm going to sound like a broken record. But this, I put on the opposition analysis against Nottingham Forest, Fulham's average positions. This is almost a carbon copy of that. The only difference is that Sanderberger replaced Lukic, and Lukic is more on the average position on the Forest one. He's more to the right-hand side of that centre circle with Pereira further forward. This time, it's Sanderberger on the left-hand side, sort of down left of the centre circle, but Pereira up in that right-hand position. So a lot of these positions are really the same as the Nottingham Forest one. I think they're really predictable. Fulham, I have to say, from what I've seen, I look back on 3 or 4 different games, different positions. They are really predictable. It's almost the carbon copy of what you're seeing in front of us here, with Traore really sort of high and wide, Jimenez dropping in, and Robinson is always the most advanced fullback of the two, as we know from his crossing. So it's just quite predictable. I think it was really easy for the analysts and Unai to try and sort out.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And it's good for the players because you could see as the game wore on, and we'll talk about the Villa sonars in a second, but even that first half, you could see that once Rodgers and Ramsey had read kind of how the game was going, you could see them picking up those spaces in those like half spaces that you like, and just having time to control it, turn, run with the ball. And like you say, if it's quite predictable, then you can just drop into those spaces, and players like Tielemans will just find you every time anyway.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, just to say, if we refer to this one, look how expansive that is compared to a Fulham one. A Fulham tried to make midfield compact. They tried to sort of, force us out to our wide areas, which I thought was a bit odd because that's where we are probably the most strongest. But I think what they've probably tried to look at is we know that Pau Torres likes to play those forward passes, wrap them into Morgan Rodgers. And I think that's probably what they've tried to stop. But it hasn't really worked, has it? Because it's kind of put us out wide. And look how wide Jacob Ramsey is on average. Now, we're used to seeing him sort of, let's just say, to the left of where Yuri Tielemans is on that halfway line, with Digne on the halfway line. So you're looking at that straight 5. This is quite expansive for us. It's quite advanced on average for us. And to see those passes from Yuri Tielemans especially, and look how much Diego Carlos is passing the ball compared to what Pau Torres is there. Look how forward-thinking they are, the purple ones from Carlos. Everything is moving forwards.
Yeah, and there was a couple of long raking balls from Carlos that were really nice quality, and you can see him getting his confidence up now. He's had a few games in the side, which is obviously encouraging to see.
Yeah, it was almost like a foil, if you like. They expect us to do this, so we're going to do that. And I think that was really good management, really good.
Yeah. In terms of the expected threat, the game flow, anything that you noticed here in particular?
Did the game change on the red cards? Not really. I mean, we could argue that I suppose we got an own goal after the Fulham red card, but not really. I mean, it's kind of I think the momentum here. It kind of, if we refer back to the match stats, that's probably relative, isn't it? As well as to this.
Yeah, I think maybe the penalty save was one moment where I think had Fulham gone 2-1 up at that time, I think they would have potentially took control a little bit more of the game, but it allowed us to maybe have a bit more confidence. Although we didn't score, it just meant that we had that opportunity to, wrestle that control in the game. And obviously, it took a little bit more time, but 60 minutes, it was Watkins with that decisive moment. And then, I guess we're in that position where we know we can generally, I know Ipswich, they did get back in, but generally we can see it out from there.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think I didn't ever feel like, if the penalty would have gone in, maybe, but I didn't ever feel like we were going to lose the game. Did you? I always thought we were going to get a draw out of it or a win. And I think the pitch isn't massive at Craven Cottage, and I think Traore is suited more to pitches that are just that tiny bit bigger, like at Newcastle, for example, or Old Trafford, where he's got space to run into. And I think Craven Cottage is just that little bit sort of smaller for him. But the threat didn't come from the players from Fulham that I thought it would do.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I haven't, this again, tempting fate a little bit, but I've never known Traore to have an amazing game against Villa. For any of the teams that he's faced up against us, I've never known him to have, even when he was at Middlesbrough and in the Championship, I don't think he was particularly threatening against them. We've always seemed to maybe handle him quite well. So, yeah, you're right in what you're saying. The threat came from one or two other players that maybe weren't the ones that were the real main focus.
Yeah. I feared a little bit for Pau Torres being isolated. I got to be honest, and I didn't fear for Luca Digne because I thought he could probably handle him so much, but I feared for the exposure. But they didn't really even play to their strength so much.
No, absolutely not. Chance creation. Looking at this, 4 chances from, I imagine they're from the corners that we had, and we had 11 corners throughout the game, and Fulham had 6, so quite a lot of threat from the set pieces. Anything else to write home about here?
No, not particularly. I think you summed it up quite well. I think it's a lot of it is probably set pieces, as we can see from the corners, and one massive long punt downfield from Bernd Leno that sort of set something. But I mean, apart from that, a lot of it is still from set pieces on the corners. There's not the 4 at the bottom there, and the 4 for Fulham. It just tells the story.
Yeah, I mean, would you say that Emery would be slightly, not concerned, that's the wrong word, but would you think that for some of the positions that maybe Rodgers, Ramsey, Bailey were getting into, would he expect a little bit more in terms of creativity or end product from any of those?
Yeah, there wasn't a sort of a great deal happening on the edge of the box, was there, from us? It wasn't a sort of, we're getting into the box into nice sort of areas. We're tending to rely on sort of Digne a lot of the time or whatever, and Leon Bailey. And I think we just need to have a little bit of a difference there. But I don't think he'll be concerned about that. I think getting Tyrone Mings back, especially for on set pieces, I think might be important.
Yeah, well, it took us, I think it was the 10th corner when we got the goal. It was slightly changed up in terms of the direction of it. I know we went near post, but a lot of them were coming into the near post as opposed to that one was slightly going away from goal. So that was interesting to see that come off. But yeah, it was just interesting to see. I know Watkins had a one-on-one. I know Rodgers had a great chance that Ramsey cut back. But whether we'd be looking at maybe one or two more kind of efforts that Ramsey might have as he gets more confident, or we want to see Leon Bailey firing back to cutting inside and hitting it with his left foot. So that'll be nice. But like I say, beggars can't be choosers. You get goals from where you get them from, and that's we managed to get 3 goals, which is great.
Yeah, you do, and that's spot on. I think we don't do any short corners either, which is quite interesting.
Not really. No, not really.
Sling them straight in, so that might be an avenue to explore for Mr. McPhee.
Yeah. End locations. Again, anything that you kind of noticed here with regards to particular areas we were targeting or particular areas that we took advantage of?
I just think a lot of this is central, so that points to Yuri Tielemans, especially in the centre of midfield. There, I think he was sort of not conducting play as such, but he had a lot of touches in the centre of the pitch, and a lot of those passes were probably into him. We can see on the right hand side there, we know that Carlos was building up with Matty Cash down the right hand side, so a higher percentage of passes down there.
Yeah, good, really interesting stuff. In terms of how the different areas of where we do end up in terms of our passing, which is really interesting, and the XG shot map with regards to where we were taking our shots from, the quality of the shots. Was there anything that you particularly noticed from this?
Well, what I would say is, again, not much difference between the two sides, apart from the statistic that matters the most at the top.
Yeah. Look, I know Fulham had a slightly higher XG. Yeah. Well, I think that header from Jimenez from the corner, I mean, that was a massive chance. But I'm trying to think of the other big chances that they missed, because they said 4 big chances missed, and I can't think of the other 3.
No, it's just that they're so close into the box there. I think offhand I can't either, Rich, to be honest.
Yeah. I know the header that Jimenez had in the first half, but maybe he had a couple of other efforts that were blocked, maybe, or I think there might be a header right at the end that went straight into Emi Martinez's hands that potentially is a good chance, but he didn't connect with it properly. He was a threat though all game, Jimenez, to be honest, and he kept going. He's in quite good form at the minute as well for them.
Yeah, I think he done really well. He's not wearing the headband anymore, so maybe that's his secret.
Yeah. Shot sequence involvement, not really seen this one before. So just talk to us a little bit about this slide.
Yeah, it does what it says on the tin. It's all about these players that are involved in the build-up to shots and everything else. And the little key at the bottom there is a shot assist, or build-up to a shot. So we're looking at Yuri Tielemans there, 4 shot assists. So he's set up people for 4 shots and 3 been involved in 3 build-ups to the shot. So that's quite a high amount. And with Morgan Rogers doing the same 3 shots as well, it's interesting to see. And Jimenez backs you up just nicely there, Rich, with 4. But Luca Digne as well, Jacob Ramsey there as well. So it's important. It's an important thing.
Yeah. Really useful. And I'm sure players like Morgan Rogers will look at that and think, right, okay, the more of those I get involved in, the more shots I have, the more, he's wanting to build up his goals and assists, and ending up with high numbers on that kind of slide or that kind of statistic is obviously going to help him in terms of hitting those numbers. So
I think we discussed it in the past, didn't we? It's all very well getting the ball and turning and being able to carry it, and creating some high XT numbers for your ball carrying, but it's what you can do when you get to the edge of the box there. What we're doing, what can we do better?
Yes, precisely. Half spaces. We kind of love this one in terms of how Emery likes his players to operate, particularly the likes of Ramsey and Rogers. So how were we looking in terms of our half space and what you call the zone 14 passes?
Yeah, again, this is where we just sort of spoke about Morgan Rogers. What can you do when you're more central in that, what we call that zone 14 space? And I think this is where he can affect the game that little bit more. On the left-hand side there, we're probably looking at JJ and Luca Digne being heavily involved. Weirdly, though, again, it's quite equal, isn't it? And when we look at the numbers, and it's quite strange how they didn't utilise Traore. Look at all that left-hand side action from like that Theo Robinson from crosses and stuff like that, but they didn't utilise that right-hand side, and I think they kind of helped us out a lot with that.
They really did. You thought after the first goal they would target that longer ball, Jimenez onto Torres, and they didn't seem to do that very often. I know Carlos kind of learnt towards, after that first goal, he started to cover in behind Pau Torres, and he did that really well, but you'd have still thought that they would keep hammering that, and even if they'd have picked up the second ball, off the clearing header, maybe Traore could have picked up the second ball and started running at the defence, but he didn't seem to do it, which, like you say, kind of let us off the hook a little bit.
Yeah, that is one of their strengths, and they played against Forest. That was really effective for them. but they just didn't do it. And it was quite, like I say, I refer back to the analysis. People go back to it and have a look. It's a similar thing to what I expected as an opposition analyst for them to do. And they just didn't do it at all.
Yeah.
That probably says more about me than it does them.
Yeah, well, maybe they should get you in.
No.
Not after the story you've just told me before we came on the show. Matty Cash has, maybe divides opinion with fans. We love his wholehearted attitude, and maybe needs to do a little bit more with numbers and productivity going forward. But he was actually the top defender. What made him that top defender in your statistical analysis?
Made the most what we call defensive actions in the game, and they're all there for people to see. I think he got a little bit of a knocking on what I saw online again, but he had a solid, albeit a quiet one, but he had a solid game, Matty Cash. 5 ball recoveries, 7 clearances, and the rest is all there for people to see. It's a basic graphic that's on the feed, so it's just important, I thought, to try and highlight his contribution in the defensive line.
Yeah, no, that's fair. And sometimes, because the way the fullbacks are utilised now with regards to modern day football, shall we say, we kind of forget that their actual first and foremost job is to be defenders and to actually defend. So yeah, to see that kind of in cold blood, in cold daylight is actually really interesting. And if, say, the analysts at Aston Villa show Matty Cash those stats, that will give him a lot of encouragement. And I'm sure Unai Emery and the coaches will be like, "You've done your job. You've done your job. Really good in terms of your defensive actions."
Yeah, and that's all you ask of him. I think he's not you wouldn't say he was a raiding, excellent attacking fullback, would you? So that is kind of his role, if you like, is to almost be in the side to thwart an opposition's left winger. That's basically his job, because he's not a great crosser of the ball. He's not great in the final third. He tends to sort of be a bit rushed. So I think that's sort of him trying to adapt to that new role.
Yeah. And in terms of general defensive shape and out of possession shape, anything again noticing here? This is where I got a little bit confused with the high line and that potential. So yeah, what did you notice here about our kind of average position out of possession? And Fulham's exactly the same.
Yeah, again, we refer back to it as we've done before. Look at the space that Traore is not being allowed on Aston Villa, where we're looking at number 12, Luca Digne, number 41, Jacob Ramsey. So you're kind of like in between there. He's going to be kind of be in between those sort of players. I know this is the defensive, shape for both sides, but if you can look at that, look how defensive he's having to be, Traore there.
Yes.
On the opposite side to us, where he is, he's not sort of, we're not having to defend massively deep. JJ's able to stay up the pitch almost, and so's Morgan Rogers. So you can tell that those 3 players in Watkins, Rogers and Ramsey are probably pressing reasonably high.
Yeah, I mean, particularly Watkins and Rogers cover the ground so quickly in terms of that press. And I mentioned yesterday on our match reaction show that I'm really excited to see what that trio can do. Ramsey, Watkins, Rogers, if they can all stay fit. Got some real exciting talent there in terms of offering something slightly different. And it's really exciting to see what they can bring.
Yeah, I think it'd be like, I've always wanted to see sort of another, if we did have a different attack-minded right back, where Digne and the right back are sort of quite high, and that allows sort of JJ and Morgan Rogers to come inside as almost like 2 10s, if you like, and then Watkins is, and just create those triangles out in those wide areas to see what would happen then.
Yeah. Lastly, the control zones, or zones of control, I should say. Fairly even again, but anything again that you notice here? The corners, I think that left-hand side, Ramsey and Digne, looking at that, and then that midfield area, Tielemans and Onana, I would say, controlling that area.
Yeah, pretty much. And you're looking at sort of both teams controlling sort of their own sort of defensive thirds, if defensive to middle thirds, let's say. They're controlling that. A little bit of it's contested, but you rightly pointed out, it's all quite even. The corners, yeah, sort of. It's hard to sort of gauge that really, sort of thing. More so for Villa, it's easier because, like you pointed out, Dino and Ramsey and everything else. But yeah, even Stevens again, really.
Yeah. Well, these are the types of games that if you want to finish high up in the league, that top 4, top 6 position, tough places to go like Craven Cottage, like, you know, the Vitality, all those types of grounds where they have taken points off teams, a la Bournemouth against Arsenal. Tricky potential game against Fulham, but we've come away with an excellent 3-1 win. And this, like I say, Gareth, these are the types of games, if you want to be finishing that in that top 4, you've got to be picking up points from.
Yeah, these are your away wins, aren't they? That you want to sort of try and pick up points from. It's a level up, I would say, from places like Ipswich, like Southampton. Probably we could include Leicester in that, the promoted teams. You're probably thinking we should be getting 3 points away at these sort of teams. Probably Palace maybe as well, you could include in that. Fulham's a little bit of a step up. So you're looking at, you know, if we get a draw there, that's great. If we can get 3 points, fantastic. Do you know what I mean? Before you get to those really elite level teams. So, yeah, it is important. Places like Fulham, Everton, places like that, Forest, you could probably say they're the places where it could be difficult to get 3 points, but it's so important that if you can.
Yeah, 100%. Well, look, fantastic analysis once again. You've mentioned it a couple of times. You do a bit of a preview, an analytical preview. We obviously have you on for talking tactics after the game, but where can people find you? Mainly on X or Twitter, as it was
get me on
previously known.
Yeah, get me on that One Villa analysis. I won't be doing anything from Bologna because the turnaround's just too quick for me for work and everything. But at that Karate JC or at One Villa analysis.
Brilliant, mate. Well, we'll be back after the Bournemouth game. Again, hopefully reflecting on another victory. And as you said, we've got Champions League
we'll
tomorrow.
Be back after the Bologna game. Bologna we're going to do, Rich. We'll do Bologna.
Oh, we will do it. Yeah, fantastic. Fantastic. Brilliant. Even better for you guys. So we will do a tactical analysis after Bologna, tactical analysis after Bournemouth, hopefully after 2 victories as well. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel. We've got so many shows coming up. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. Help us on the road to 5K, like I said before. Get your comments in below as well. Gareth, thank you once again for your fantastic analysis. Thank you all for watching. And as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.